What is up everybody, I am LeakyTapsMan and this is another wishlist video, and this week I'm going to do Battlefield 4. Now this may also be construed as Battlefield Bad Company 3, they may obviously take the route of Bad Company again. The changes all still apply, but either way this is what I'd like in the next Battlefield. Now Battlefield 3 kind of stepped out of its normality in the sense that it added a campaign mode, which is fine. It was pretty crap to be honest, so I'd say improve the campaign, make it less Call of Duty like, because let's face it, they basically emulated Call of Duty in the campaign. It was incredibly linear, so I'd say make it more open-ended. The whole concept of Battlefield is to have these massive open environments in the multiplayer, and then to kind of detract from that in the single player felt a bit like it was going against what made it great in the first place. So I'd say have more open-ended missions, give us more vehicle use, give us multiple routes, just do not try to imitate your competitors, because Battlefield has enough going on in its own right and it doesn't need to. That said, I do think they should add a scoring type system for the campaign as an add-on, so something like we've seen in Halo or Gears of War, where you accumulate points for certain kills and maybe killing a certain amount without dying and stuff like that, that just gives extra impetus to play through the campaign multiple times. Because with Battlefield 3's campaign, you kind of blasted through it on hard, which wasn't that hard, and then you felt that was it, barring a few achievements which were easy to get. I think a scoring system gives it that extra replayability that was sorely lacking. As for co-op, I think the co-op in Battlefield 3 was actually not that bad. What I would say is add a survival type mode for co-op, similar to Onslaught that we saw in Battlefield Bad Company 2. I did find it strange that they took this out for Battlefield 3. I know it was a little rough around the edges, but the fact that we have squads and the dynamics for squads is really good, and I think it would have another dimension over certain games like Halo where they have a similar mode. But obviously with that squad mechanic and with vehicles and those factors, I think would make a survival type mode a lot more interesting. Edging away from the PC version for a second, I would say give the console version 64 players. As I alluded to earlier, Battlefield prides itself on having these massive open maps and just huge scale battles, and obviously 24 players is somewhat underwhelming for consoles. Obviously Massive Action Game, I believe it stood for, had 256 players with no real problems. Frontlines had 50 as I recall, so it's obviously doable on the current technology. But even if they feel the need to have Battlefield 4 released on the next gen consoles, then do it, if that means that it ups the player count. Because in Battlefield 3 on the consoles, there were far too many instances where you are just spending half of your game looking for an enemy, and it's a real turn off. As for game modes in the multiplayer, I would say Capture the Flag would be one that I would definitely include. It seemed like a glaring omission for me. It doesn't necessarily have to be a flag, even something like a VIP could be an AI character, but just something that's a bit different from the usual Conquest and Rush. I know they have Team Deathmatch, but I don't particularly rate that. Staying on the multiplayer, map variety needs to be a bit more diverse. There was a fair bit of diversity in Battlefield 3, don't get me wrong. I just think certain weather effects and the time of day should be changed, maybe put it on a cycle. I don't know if the technology allows for it to change during a game, but I think that would be kind of cool if it could change from day to night and vice versa, or just give us an option for one map day, one map night. It makes the map feel kind of new when it's not. Now I don't know if the PC version allows custom games, I assume it does, obviously, but give us that option on consoles as well. Just give us the option to play a game with a few other players. We don't necessarily want to play with 24 people every time, and just let us mess around with the settings ourselves and have a bit of fun outside of the competitive stance that multiplayer seems to take nowadays. And failing custom games, I would say, well no, not even failing custom games, include this anyway, give proper multiplayer tutorials, because it really throws you in at the deep end, this multiplayer. I mean, I consider myself somewhat of a veteran of first-person shooters, and I was kind of taken aback by just how much there is to get to grips with. Just give some tutorials for newcomers, let them play around with the vehicles and all the gadgets, and basically give them a stepping stone into multiplayer so they're not getting their asses kicked at the start by people who have been playing it for quite some time, because just throwing them in there only acts as a deterrent for new players. Another thing I'd like very much so is more destruction. So this is both in the single player and the multiplayer. Obviously, if they go down the less linear route of the single player that I suggested to begin with, then destruction should be more of an option to kind of blast your own path through a map. In multiplayer, I know there was a certain amount of destructibility, but it kind of scaled itself back from Bad Company, and I'd like to be able to blow up pretty much everything in a map. Call me old-fashioned, but I think that's pretty awesome. People love it, myself included, so keep it coming, guys. A relatively minor thing next, let us alter our loadouts in between games. Really, I don't get why they didn't allow us to do that in Battlefield 3, but just let us do it in Battlefield 4. Because we don't like to do it during games or leave a match and then do it and then go back in. It just seems odd. Again, another minor thing, I'd like some kind of bonus for a kill streak. Now, don't get your pitchforks and torches at the ready. I'm not saying go down the COD route, just reward players for doing well by giving them an XP bonus. Just a few extra points and a bit more of a reward for having a great game. And a few more minor things just for the multiplayer that I'd like fixing more than anything. For health, I would either like it where it doesn't recharge, or at least makes it so that recharging health is considerably slower than what it is in Battlefield 3, because medics kind of don't have much of a purpose when they're not throwing down medikits. I know they can revive people, but more often than not, medics don't even bother to do that. I'd just say have it so that there's more of a reliance on your squad mates sticking to their roles, and that's one of the key ones that I would like. I mean, personally, I'd rather they didn't recharge health, but I would also be open to the concept that they make it just slower to recharge health. Also, spawn camping, it wasn't exactly prevalent, but it was definitely noticeable on certain maps. I'm looking at you, Metro. One way to deter this is either don't allow players near your spawn, just kind of make it a no-go zone. I know they had this, but make the zone bigger, or make it so that any kills that they gain inside that general area they just don't get points for, and they'll soon stop being dicks, or they'll be less inclined to anyway. And finally, when you're killed, I think it should pan in your general direction of the killer rather than showing exactly where they are. This makes sniping more or less redundant for me, and just defending a spot in general. You're constantly on the move because everyone knows where you are once you've killed them. And I know you might think this promotes camping almost, but if you know more or less the general direction they're in, you'll be able to find them eventually. But it just gives that person the extra chance to kind of defend a point without constantly being on edge. So that more or less summarises everything that I would like in Battlefield 4. As always, I would greatly appreciate any feedback and suggestions that you guys have. I know Battlefield has a hell of a following, so I'm sure you all have your own thoughts and opinions on where this can go. The feedback on all my others has been very extensive and given me a lot of food for thought, so I'm interested to hear what you guys say. Thanks for watching as always, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Peace out.